Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. We are back. Ladies and gentlemen, are we really looking at a whistleblower here? Or was it all the perfect trap? Gotcha! We got Q to do. You want to see it? Okay. Before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, I gotta come clean. I gotta get something off my chesticles. I was wrong. I did you dirty. No, I didn't do you dirty, but I was wrong.
How did that make you feel?
Fine. Not necessarily good or bad either way. I just, wanted to call it out. Anyway, a couple of days ago, I stated that I didn't think that former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, would end up speaking. I just had a feeling that it was not going to go down, but go down it did. She did speak. For hours and hours and hours. I hope it was cathartic for her, but in case you didn't catch the whole thing, I made you a little summary.
Do you have any information regarding the President of the United States accepting any bribes? No. Do you have any information regarding any criminal activity that the President of the United States has been involved with at all? No.
So I hope that helps. Post 3596, 38 minutes after the hour of 1. And yes, that's the correct time. And yes, it also may be different from your time. Figure it out. What advantages might exist when you know the other side's playbook? Well, you know what their strengths, their weaknesses are. You know what their tendencies are. You know what their bag of tricks is. You know what they're going to defend against. And it will probably help you see it coming down the road. So there's lots of advantages there. And in regards to this whole situation with this perfect phone call, and yet we have all these whistleblowers who claim that it's imperfect. As a matter of fact, they're willing to die on this hill and go for impeachment over this whole thing. Seems pretty important, right? Seems like a pretty big trap. Now, when you're looking for leakers or whistleblowers, or in this case, it's kind of the same thing, right? One way to do it is to know what the actual conversation is and then maybe leak out a couple of different versions. Those who are into knuckleheadedry may grab on to those said versions and then leak it either to the media, other intelligence officials, politicians, or whatnot, maybe even foreign dignitaries. But that's how this has gone on. That's how we've caught our leakers, by basically giving them a false version of a story and then seeing who bites and then just following that whole path. Who's going to end up reporting it? And then we can kind of figure out the chain, right? That's what this is all about. And I think that's probably why the POTUS constantly refers to this phone call as a perfect phone call, because it almost seems like a perfect trap. But either way, it is definitely a trap. That's what I said, and Merriam-Webster says it too. This is the definition right here. We're not going to go through all this. You can read it for yourself. I think we all understand this is a trap. Everybody walked right into this, and the more that they are willing to go in front of whether the Senate or Congress or testify and really start putting themselves out on Front Street about this whole narrative, it exposes themselves. And that's essentially what this was all about, right? Meanwhile, POTUS knows exactly that this call was just fine. Doesn't seem like a really, really big deal, right? But this means everything for somebody like, say, a Joe Biden. And speaking of Joe Biden and son, check out what Congresswoman Elise Stefanik has to say.
The first time you personally became aware of Burisma was actually when you were being prepared by the Obama State Department for your Senate confirmation hearings. And this was in the form of practice questions and answers. This was your deposition. And you testified that in this particular practice Q&A with the Obama State Department, it wasn't just generally about Burisma and corruption, it was specifically about Hunter Biden and Burisma. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And the exact quote from your testimony, Ambassador, is, quote, "The way the question was phrased in this model Q&A was, what can you tell us about Hunter Biden's, being named to the board of Burisma?" So for the millions of Americans watching, President Obama's own State Department was so concerned about potential conflicts of interest from Hunter Biden's role at Burisma that they raised it themselves while prepping this wonderful ambassador nominee before her confirmation. And yet our Democratic colleagues and the chairman of this committee cry foul when we dare ask that same question that the Obama State Department was so concerned about. But we will continue asking it. And lastly, in my 20 seconds left, I just want to get it on record. In terms of the defensive lethal aid, which you were an advocate for, that was not provided by President Obama. It was provided by President Trump.
Wow. Wow.
I know, right? Wow. It's like they walked right into that one. Q says, enjoy the show. Let's move on. Post 3597, 30 minutes after the hour of 2, we get this Twitter status right here. Q Army at Prior Lee on Twitter is responding to Tom Fitton, but also retweeting Enoch on Twitter, who says, do you believe in coincidences? And gives us this sweet graphic right here. And here it is right here. We talked about this just the other day, but they made a nice little graphic here. You can see in the top left is the Q post from the 13th of November. And this was where Q was basically referring us back to July 8th, 2019. July 8th, 2019 is the post you see in the bottom left there where it says surveillance of Sarah Carter and John Solomon. And Q was reminding us that they knew about that all along. Now, on the right side, you see a Twitter status from Tom Fitton from November 15th. Coup update, list of those allegedly targeted for illegal monitoring by ousted Obama holdover ambassador to Ukraine. So, Marie Yovanovitch had basically unmasked all these people. And we, of course, know that this also happened with Samantha Power. We talked about her a little bit yesterday. Those were our two ambassadors, right, that were uncovering all this information and essentially monitoring our own press. Jack Posobiec, Donald Trump Jr., Ingraham Mangle. You can see all the people that are basically tagged in this tweet here. But you can see the highlighted ones are John Solomon and Sarah Carter. And I've said before that these are the two that Q has been referring a lot of information through because we know that it's going to be legit info and there's likely some protection there. But definitely they were targets of the deep state, and it looks like they were definitely targets of this Yovanovitch. So there you go. Do you believe in coincidences? Mathematically impossible? No, the chances are very slim. What are the chances, John?
3.
Okay, Date Public became aware. Date Anons became aware. We've talked about this a lot already. October 28, 2017. Reconcile. Do you think we are targeted and attacked by the largest media companies in the world because we are a LARPing live action role player? Logical thinking. Q. I think you know the answer to all of that. Let's move on. Post 3598, 4 minutes after the hour of 3, we get a Twitter link, but let's cover the rest of this post real quick. Q says, whistleblower traps. March 4th, 2018. Trap keyword select provided. Whole or parts, break. You have more than you know. Future proves past. Okay, so it looks like Q is wanting us to search the keyword trap, and we actually find that on March 4th, 2018, which is what this Twitter status is about from Stormy Patriot Joe, whistleblower traps, and it takes us to the Q post 836 from the 4th of March, 2018. Now we're just going to kind of cruise through this here. Expand your thinking. Who leaked Vault 7 to WikiLeaks? And if you'll remember, WikiLeaks was the when the WikiLeaks published the Vault 7 drops. This all had to do with how the CIA was infiltrating all these different programs, and in doing so, they were leaving kind of this stamp or a footprint, if you will, which would implicate that either China or Russia had hacked it or whatnot. It looked like they were trying to pin the blame on someone else. Now, we don't know exactly who it was. We suspect it could have been Snowden or this Snowden 2.0 or whatever, but we're not really sure. But that was essentially the mission. And this was being done so through this Fiddler, which was a debugging program. Now, if you'll remember, Snowden worked for the CIA, but also worked for the NSA with NSA contractor Booz Allen Hamilton. And so it seems like the mission was to infiltrate, centralize, secure, and expose to harm. If you'll remember, this essentially pitted the CIA against the NSA. It looked like Snowden basically stole and leaked some of these surveillance secrets and then kind of published it to make it look like he was the good guy, but essentially was kind of giving a dog whistle for everybody, warning of the NSA and trying to skirt the NSA. And of course, when he dropped all this, he ran off to Russia, interestingly enough. Well, it looked like the White House had done some interference here. White House interference, White House directive. If you'll remember, Obama gave a speech talking about how they're going to reform the NSA and blah, 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 blah. Nothing really happened to, but the point was to link this to Russia, right? Now, it looks like Fiddler ended up turning into Ghost Prime. And when we talk about Prime, I think we're talking about the program for research, infrastructure, and matching expenses. This was supposed to be kind of a protection bureau, and they would find other institutions, financial institutions and whatnot. But what they were essentially doing was using it as a slush fund, penalizing other institutions, and then just funneling all that money into whatever they wanted, whether it was somebody's Democratic Party campaign or maybe Antifa or ISIS or whatever it was, the flavor of the day. They could fund it by way of this Prime. And they were doing it by way of the colleges of liberal arts and sciences, which is what I think we're talking about in Mission 7, as opposed to just simply classified. This was a way that they could kind of, use the mainstream media, journalists, teachers, professors, whatnot, bloggers, anybody who could control the narrative. And they were doing this originally to elect President Obama at the time. But one of these programs actually was called Project Narwhal, oddly enough. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But that's probably what we were talking about here. And then it brings us to Mission 8, Whistleblower Traps. And of course, I think what we're talking about here is exactly what we're starting to see now, right? If you'll remember, we were talking about the Dropbox program, Apache and whatnot. And of course, John Perry Barlow was another one of these whistleblowers who had a rough go of things. Now, I'm not sure what the job C-3567K, that may be a future proofs past thing. I'm not exactly sure. But what I do think what we're talking about was setting up a series of these whistleblower Dropboxes. And that was a way to trap some of these people. We already kind of got an idea of that with Edward Snowden. That would lead us up to Mission 9, which is probably where we're at right here, which is censorship, which is probably going to involve yours truly. And I think you all know what's going to happen from there. And then, of course, we have the Class Plus Relay, which I imagine, like I said, comes from the colleges of liberal arts and sciences and then gets relayed to whatever, possible platform can spread that narrative. Now, as we go back to the post 3598, I want to clarify that I am not lumping in Obama's Project Narwhal with this. I was just kind of recalling that off the top of my head because we were just talking about this dog named Narwhal. But to clarify what that was, is that this was a program, it was a data collection program. And if you had signed up for his website back in the day, this would have been around 2012, they were using this information to spam you with all kinds of tailored emails to fit your demographic or whatever, but basically to sway you towards leaning towards the Obama narrative and whatnot. But this was called Project Narwhal, and you can go ahead and look that up, but I wanted to bring that up because it just reminded me, considering we were talking about this dog named Narwhal just yesterday, and now we're talking about all this stuff. But I do think we're talking about these Dropbox type programs, whether it was Apache or something like that. And essentially, it looks like a lot of these people have walked right into this trap, like we talked about, POTUS giving out all these different narratives to see which ones are our leaky pants. Now, in regards to this here in the post, whole or parts, break/break, I'm not really sure, but the first thing I thought of is using the term break for, say, ham radio communications. And let's say that we have two people that are talking about the weather patterns or whatever, something very, very common, and I need to break in with something more important like an accident or, whatever, an emergency situation. I might use that term to break in and, signify that there's something more important. And as you can see right there, I'm flashing you a little graphic kind of backing that up. Now, from what I understand, this can also be used in air traffic control during busy times. If you're talking to multiple planes, you might use the term break to signify that the very next thing that you say is referring to somebody different. So maybe you're talking to one plane and then you say break, and that lets the person know that the next thing's coming out of your mouth, you're talking to the next plane. It lets people know that you're moving on. You guys can let me know what you think about that, but that was what I thought about. And of course, thinking about that terminology, it made me wonder if this was maybe talking about kind of a way of saying that we understand what was being, done through these ham radio communications. And as you know, Nellie Orr had herself a ham radio license. And she was likely using this to communicate with Russians to go back and forth as she was compiling all her information for this Steele dossier. But that would be my guess. Either way, Q says you have more than you know, so I have a feeling we'll probably end up seeing it and finding out exactly what that code means. Q says future proves past. Q. All right, Patriots, those are your Q posts for now. And finally, let me leave you with this. This is a caller calling into C-SPAN regarding the impeachment stream, and they were taking questions, and I thought you might like this one. Check it out.
And he did not recant that information.
If you had the chance to ask a question, would that be your question, or is there something else you want to hear from the ambassador?
Something else. I'd ask her if she's aware that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
We'll go on next to Chad.
Let's go to Chad. Let's go to Chad. All right, Patriots, that's all I got for you for now. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. Thanks to all of you who do that already. And if you're new to my channel, please understand that it's going to get harder and harder to find these videos here on YouTube. So I highly suggest bookmarking my page so that you can find it, because you probably won't get notified. You'll probably get unsubscribed, and it will be very difficult to find my videos. But thanks for trying. All my alternate links are down below. Thanks to all of you who've been migrating over to BitChute. Like I've said before, it's not perfect, but it's good for now. Many of you have been joining me over there. I really do appreciate that too. All my alternate links are down below in the video description if you want to try one of those out. If you want to send me some information, my email is down below. Please do not DM me on social media. My email is down below, and you can send me something there. If you're old school, you can send something to my P.O. box. And if you'd like to support the channel, my Patreon is linked down below. It's all down in the video description. All right, Patriots, until next time, have a great weekend and stay funky.